It's been a long time coming, but it is time we talk about the very best games that the Nintendo Wii has to offer. I went through my entire collection. I actually went through an entire list of every Wii game ever released, and it's shocking just how many legit great titles that I had to leave off of this list. Like there are like a number of notable exceptions that I'm sure a lot of people will get angry at me about, but one of the big things I wanted to emphasize with this video was the sheer variety and scope of just what the Wii was, because I think too many people have this misconception that the Wii like basically only had Wii Sports. And that couldn't be further from the truth. The Wii has, I think, one of the best gaming libraries ever, which led to the success of the console and it becoming one of the most successful consoles ever made. It was a huge deal in the mid 2000s to own a Wii and to be playing on it regularly. And I, even today, still constantly find new things to enjoy and appreciate about it. And now that we're past the Wii era, it is time to look back on it and kind of think back on what the very best titles were. And I do think Excite Bots is a really good example of the kind of game that could only be possible on Nintendo Wii. Because look at it. This is the least realistic racing game I have ever seen. That was always the criticism towards Nintendo Wii back in the day. It was like, oh, it's not realistic enough. It's not real. The graphics. Like every single time people would just scream about how the graphics weren't good enough. But when you compare Excite Bots and its predecessor, Excite Truck, to other racing games, you find that these are incredibly novel, unique games with crazy track design, some of the most verticality I think I've seen in any racing game ever, like really crazy jumps, like incredible flexible game design. Like you're going to be bouncing off walls and like making crazy jumps that you didn't know were possible. Like it really does feel like in this game, a lot of times you never really take the same path twice. It's so impressive. I wish this really is the kind of thing that I think would have done better in the Switch era, because people these days have a lot more of an appreciation for these kind of games. But, back in the day, picking this up off the shelf, playing the demo station and just realizing that, like, wait a minute, this game is actually really, really good. It was a game that nobody was talking about, nobody cared about, nobody knew anything about, nobody was excited for it, and yet I loved it more than any other game I played around that time. And I think that really strongly demonstrates why this game is so spectacular. I was always very surprised at the negative reception that Metroid Prime 3 had when it first came out. This was a game that took the excellent first two Metroid Prime games and kind of standardized it for a Western audience. It's a lot more typical for Western designed video games with its ideas, right? Instead of being stuck to one planet, you're going to several, right? You're fighting off alien invasions, right? It's very similar to the structure of Halo, actually, where you have all these missions on these individual planets. You're actually like in contact with the Galactic Federation, and they're giving you orders and they're telling you what to do. And each location has its own unique backstory and lore and history, way better lore than anything in Dark Souls or BioShock, by the way, or Mass Effect. The game is just impeccable with its unique control scheme that even today is really, really impressive, with its intense combat situations, reasonably good boss fights, great environment design, great environment art, right? This was a really standout title for 2007. If anything, I would say this one release kind of demonstrated that the narrative that the Wii didn't have any hardcore first-person shooter games to be completely and utterly wrong. Not only is this game competitive with the Dead Spaces, with the Halos, it's actually quite a bit better than them. because it's about more than just shooting things. It's about averting real environmental disasters. It's about overcoming adversity. It's about all the different things that can come and kill you, right? Each planet has its own unique ecosystem and structure. Like, you really end up feeling like you're, for the first time in Metroid history, that you're exploring a real organic universe, and which to this day has still not been topped. Now, that remains to be seen if that's going to be true in Prime 4. I believe it's not. I believe they have confirmed that Prime 4 is actually going to be relegated to one planet again, which I admit is kind of disappointing, but if anything, that just makes Prime 3 stick out all the more. Like, this was a game that I think should have gotten a lot more attention and praise for what it did. Yes, I do think Metroid Prime, the original, is better, but that's one of the best games ever made. Like, if you're comparing a game to the best game ever released, I I think it's pretty solid. Most people would probably put Super Mario Galaxy at the top of their lists, but for me personally, I was disappointed with Super Mario Galaxy when it first came out. It was a lot like Twilight Princess for me, where I put this game in for the first time after hearing so much about how good it was, how wonderful it was, and I just didn't understand the appeal. I got all 120 stars and felt it was kind of underwhelming compared to 64 and older Mario games. Like, I was not impressed with Mario Galaxy when I first played it. At the time, I suppose I was pursuing other interests and was beginning to grow out of Nintendo, so I hadn't yet developed an appreciation for this kind of game. Something that's not trying to be super hardcore or super difficult or have a really engrossing story or complex mechanics. No, it's just a bunch of really good levels slapped together with a basic story. And at the time, I didn't appreciate what the game was doing for me. But as I come back to it over and over and over again, especially after playing Super Mario Galaxy 2, the more I compare this to that game, I begin to understand this game has this very unique, interesting, almost mystical kind of vibe to it, right? The music is stellar, the coloring is great. Rosalina is one of the best new additions in Mario history. In a lot of ways, I kind of see this as the game that kind of defined how the 3D Mario formula should work, right? You're not just running around an empty course like in 64 and Sunshine. No, there are actual obstacles, right? It's structured very similarly to a 2D Mario game, but in a 3D space. So in that regard, this game is actually pretty revolutionary. This game set the template for what 3D World and the new Super Mario Bros. Games would do going forward. And I do think it has to be the best Mario game of the 2000s so far. Right? I think this game is just something remarkable. I think I've spoken to so many people who will tell you that this is one of their favorite games of all time, not just on the Wii or in the Mario franchise, but video games as a whole, right? There is no denying this game has had a very strong impact on people. And I think that really is a testament to its overarching quality. Again, it's not simply once you finish this game, I prefer Super Mario Galaxy 2, right? I've always said that. I've always maintained that. But in order to really appreciate how good Super Mario Galaxy 2 is, you really have to 100% this game first. And when you go through Super Mario Galaxy 2, you end up appreciating this game more. So in a lot of ways, Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 complement each other and make each other better. But you really can't play Super Mario Galaxy 2 without playing this first, which is why even though I prefer 2 over this, I feel like 1 has to be considered the better game overall, simply because this is the innovator that established the formula that proved Mario to be one of the most viable IPs in gaming. The new Super Mario Bros. Games are some of the best games ever made, and honestly, I think Wii is the most culturally significant of all of them. I love DS, right? DS was the big one that really kickstarted the Nintendo DS and propelled it to being one of the best-selling consoles of all time, right? It really brought 2D Mario back and proved it was viable even in the mid-2000s. New Super Mario Bros. DS is an amazing game in its own right. I don't want to downplay its legacy or like try to say it's not very good or that it's underwhelming. Like that game was phenomenal, but New Super Mario Bros. Wii really improved on it in one very critical way. It introduced proper multiplayer to a 2D Mario experience. Nintendo, after a long period of time, managed to scrap together their ideas, get the mechanics working, and made an incredible four-player multiplayer adventure, right? This is really impressive in its own right. Whenever you get a group of people to play New Super Mario Bros. Wii together, it is a phenomenal experience. I have endlessly fond memories of playing through this game like over and over and again, like really getting all the star coins, playing all the levels, and just marveling at just how much fun it is. And what do I see when I go online? People like Scott the Woz trying to convince you that like, the graphics are bland and the enemies dancing around makes you not take them seriously. No, I love the visuals. I love the art style. I love the personality of the enemies. If anything, the release of Super Mario Bros. Wonder has made me appreciate those aspects more. Not that I don't like Wonder. If anything, I think Wonder is one of the best 2D platformers ever produced. But when you compare New Super Mario Bros. Wii to Wonder, right, you have a much more straightforward, easy to understand, like unique Mario game that came out like over a decade prior. Yeah, Wonder improved on New Super Mario Bros. In a lot of critical aspects, but we cannot deny that New Super Mario Bros. Has had a very strong, lasting legacy in making 2D platformers relevant again. People like Scott the Woz don't appreciate how, in the first half of the decade, the 2D platformer seemed like it was a dying genre, right? People did not want to play 2D games at the time because 3D was such a new, novel thing. And it was New Super Mario Bros. That brought the trend back. It was games like Street Fighter 4 that ended the long string of every major fighting game franchise being 3D, right? It was a bunch of notable projects that managed to prove that 2D gaming can do things that 3D gaming can't. That there's value in this more traditional video game design. That it's not simply a thing of the past. And New Super Mario Bros. Wii really innovated on that idea. Introducing multiplayer in a genre that traditionally did not feature it very prominently is a very big deal, and it is a lot of fun. So I don't want to hear people complaining about New Super Mario Bros. Wii being allegedly uninspired and boring. Like, before the DS game, we hadn't gotten a new 2D Mario game in like 15 years. So this is a sequel to that launched on a different console, that has local multiplayer, that has a lot of new power-ups and level. Like, what more do you need in a Mario game, really? And again, I have always been a critic of the criticisms of New Super Mario Bros. This is nothing new to me, but it cannot be understated that New Super Mario Bros. Wii is a phenomenal experience. These days, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is considered one of the best 2D platformers ever made. But people forget that at the time of the release, it was made fun of and derided. You can just look up all those weird, old, salty videos from a decade ago when Cranky Kong was showing off at the VGX, if you don't believe me. But it's really easy to forget, considering how well received Tropical Freeze is today, that Donkey Kong Country Returns is a really good 2D platformer in its own right. Now, is it as good as Tropical Freeze? No. Is it as good as the original games? No. But considering it had been something like 15 years since we had gotten the last proper 2D Donkey Kong Country game, this was an absolute stellar return to form. Retro Studios absolutely killed the revival to this IP. It has vibrant, interesting colors, great visual design, unique new enemies. It distinguishes itself from the Rareware games. It has a lot of really cool, interesting mechanics, like the ability to climb onto things. Donkey Kong can take multiple hits, which is kind of unusual for 2D platformers, actually. And I think above all, the series has gained a reputation for being exceedingly difficult for Nintendo platforming fans, right? These games are really well made and interesting. So it's always kind of disappointing to me whenever I see people like try and write these games off as just being like lazy 2D platformers. Yeah, you saw a couple of people do that for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, but they are really, really, really good. This one in particular, I think, does have a lot of interesting aspects to it, right? Like, it's a lot more like the original Donkey Kong Country than Tropical Freeze is, as you're going around the island and a lot of similar island themes. Like, seeing those levels in a more modern design with like new mechanics and new takes on things, it really gives you an appreciation as to how high production a 2D platformer can actually be, right? Like, seeing all the enemy designs and like the way the vines move and like swinging on the vines and like the way DK like realistically has to like cling on to things, right? He sometimes like spins himself around to get a better position, right? Like, it comes off as a lot more fluid and natural than what you would see in a Mario game, right? And I think that's what Donkey Kong Country really excels at. It's like, it is very cartoony. It's very exaggerated, but at the same time, there's this like real world kind of realism and weight to it that makes it feel like a lot more real than a lot of its contemporaries. You know, back in the day, it was like the visual style that made people feel that way, but in this one, it's like the physics, it's the design of the character, it's the way the levels are laid out, right? Like, it feels like a location that could actually exist. Like, Retro put a lot of effort into making the each individual level just come off completely distinct and interesting. You know, most famous of which are probably like the shadow levels, but I think the game is chock full of like sequences like that just really demonstrate just how high the bar has been set when it comes to 2D platformers. I really don't think that any major video game publisher is going to come close to what Retro is doing with these games anytime soon. Although The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess released on the Wii, and I believe sold best on Wii, it's not really a Wii game. It was originally designed for the GameCube, and there's a lot of signs of that in the final release, right? You know, the GameCube version of that game, I think, is superior to the Wii version, and remains to be like my go-to version of that game even today. With Skyward Sword, though, this was the first premier Legend of Zelda title on Nintendo Wii, and it took full advantage of the system's unique controller and features, right? This was an absolute landmark Zelda game for me, because at the time, the criticism towards these games was that they couldn't escape from Ocarina of Time's legacy, right? They all felt like rehashes of Ocarina of Time. It wasn't really true even then, but with Twilight Princess, like, really leaning on like Ocarina of Time nostalgia, like, a lot of people were concerned that Zelda was falling into a bit of a rut, right? Like, that they weren't really innovating or doing anything creative or interesting. And Skyward Sword is the game that proved those allegations wrong. Now, what happened immediately upon release was that this was an extremely polarizing game that everyone hated and everyone complained about it, right? You know, I remember what that was like when this game was first unveiled, and people like declared it to be the end of Zelda and the end of the Nintendo Wii. Like, I remember how rough that was. But over the years, the game has really gotten a reputation for being a really stellar, innovative adventure. I myself have always advocated for the game. I've always been a big fan of it. But, like, I was really surprised at how well the HD re-release did on Nintendo Switch. Like, it really does feel like the game has finally found its audience. And I do think, historically speaking, this is the game that really allowed Fujibayashi to develop his own version of the universe and characters, right? This is very similar to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in a lot of ways, with like the art style and like the way the characters look and like the stamina meter and the way the world is designed. Like it's all very. You can definitely see how this title specifically influenced a lot of the direction in Breath of the Wild. A lot of Breath of the Wild ideas came from this game. A lot of people like to think that like Breath of the Wild just kind of came out of nowhere, but they were building up to it for a long, long time. And one of the things that Skyward Sword did to do that was making traversing the world way more interesting. This is something that people don't really talk about when it comes to Twilight Princess, but the Hyrule Field in Twilight Princess is completely barren and empty. It's huge, right? It's gigantic, but there's nothing in it. There is no reason to get off your horse and explore Hyrule Field at all, aside from like the occasional heart piece, right? The world of Twilight Princess is terrible, in spite of all of its like really strong positive aspects, right? Skyward Sword fixed that by stripping away a lot of the landmass and making them more condensed, putting interesting NPCs everywhere, like having a lot of cool navigational tools and progressing each area feeling like its own little challenge, dungeon. I think puzzle is how Enoma described it back in the day. Like it really made the world feel way more alive and interesting than what they were doing before. And that really helped inspire the design of Breath of the Wild, where like you're constantly going from place to place, constantly doing things, constantly meeting people, constantly like gathering items and like discovering new things, right? Like and Skyward Sword kind of set the template, right? This is the game that established how that would work. All Breath of the Wild did was increase the scale of it, and but yeah, like the thing is, as much as I love Breath of the Wild, as much as I love Tears of the Kingdom, I think in a lot of ways Skyward Sword is the last traditional Zelda we'll ever get, because this is the last one we've gotten with traditional linear dungeon design, where you go through a dungeon, get the item, and use the item to like beat the boss, like, right? Like it's kind of weird looking back on it now. Because, like I mentioned earlier, that formula was like really hated and made fun of at the time. But we're at the point now where a lot of people really do miss that design, right? They really do have an appreciation for it. And I'm not saying that they're like wrong in feeling that way, but I want to emphasize that there's a reason they moved away from the design, right? Because so many people got filtered by it and tried to call the game bad or whatever. I Skyward Sword's dungeon design and their boss and its bosses are just phenomenal in general. It has the most interesting motion controlled combat I think I've ever seen in a big AAA production like this. Like you could argue that like Wii Sports Resort or Nintendo Switch Sports might have like better quote unquote motion controls, WarioWare Move It. Like they might have better motion controls, quote unquote, but like they've never been put together in like a big AAA like production like this, where like you can realistically move your sword and attack enemies in different directions, which is like endlessly entertaining and never gets old, and is something that like I, as like a huge fan of this game, am really sad was stripped away from future installments. Like, again, that is a combat system that I think has a lot of potential. And Skyward Sword uses it to great effect, but I really think we never did get our proper sword fighting game, right, on Nintendo Wii. Skyward Sword is the best we've gotten, and it's great, but again, we could have gotten like some really crazy super bosses using that. Again, maybe it'll be in the cards like before in the future, right? Maybe that'll be something that they put out. Again, like Echoes of Wisdom seems to be doing a lot with with the magic system, and we haven't had magic in Zelda since like what, Wind Waker? Like it's weird to think that like Twilight Princess doesn't have a, or Skyward Sword have like proper magic meters. But yeah, I the game is phenomenal. It is a remarkable game with a great story too. This is the most I've ever enjoyed a story in a Zelda game, I think. Zelda herself is incredibly likable in this. Her relationship with Link is incredibly cute. Like you can tell they're in love with each other. It's it's so good. It's so good to see this play out and just see how the characters like how their stories develop. And Zelda herself is like a more proactive character in this than she was in past installments. Like it's really interesting to see how the character has kind of proven herself to be this really really interesting dynamic character when the situation calls for it, right? Like anybody who plays these games knows just how cool Zelda is, and it's just. But anyway, yeah, great game. Highly recommend it. Definitely check out the Switch version if you can. It was a shame this game was treated the way it was when it first came out. Now, this is a game I myself overlooked back in the day. I remember playing this on a demo station in GameStop in 2008 and thinking it was like kind of slow and boring. I didn't like the animations. It was one of those situations where I'm just like, is this something I would really be interested in? And I decided no, I wasn't interested in this. I'd be better spent my money elsewhere. Put it on the back burner for years before I finally got around to playing it. Right, I bought it for like $10 at a GameStop, and it was the best $10 I have ever spent in my life. If any game needs an HD re-release, it's this one. Like, if Nintendo's looking for a game to re-release on Switch right now, it should be this one, because this was an incredibly inventive, fun 2D platformer that really defies the conventions of the genre, right? Where enemies don't hurt you, where you run into them, where puzzles are a lot more well thought out and intricate. Wario is an incredibly powerful character who just throws bosses across the room, right? Like, Wario Land Shake It is a really good example of just how Good Feel can take an established character like Wario and just do something really innovative and cool with him. The team Good Feel, of course, went on to make Princess Peach Showtime, which is currently my game of the year of 2024 as well. So these guys are like super underrated devs. And every time I play this game, every time I go through it, I just kind of marvel at just the simplicity of it, and the cool mechanics and like all the things you can do, and just like the achievements I think are the really interesting thing. Like 300%ing this game, beating all the stages, collecting all the treasures, and doing all the missions. It is like a really, really difficult task. Like it is incredibly time consuming. I can't tell you how much time I put into this game. I think it has to be significant, like more than the average platformer. Like I want to say like 50 or 100 hours, maybe not that much, but like there's no denying that I put a lot of time into playing this game and like getting everything in it and doing everything and just over and over and over again. Like it never stopped being fun up until like I 100%ed everything there was to see in this game. Like, and even beyond that, I still have like this really deep appreciation for this. This is my all-time favorite Wario game, I would say. This is a testament to Wario Land's quality and a good homage to what made like the Game Boy title so great, right? And nobody bought it, right? Like the reason we never got another one is because this game did not do gangbusters. And it's such a shame too, because we haven't gotten a Wario Land game since. And I know it's one of those series that people really want to see come back, but what I always see from the community is like complaining about WarioWare existing. Like, how dare Nintendo produce WarioWare when what we really want is Wario Land, but like WarioWare does well and Wario Land doesn't. Like, I don't understand what's so hard to understand about this. At this stage, like, honestly, I would rather get a re-release of this, like an HD re-release of this that really emphasizes the great sprite work and the characters. So people have like a better appreciation for what this game did, right? Like again, we're still in this weird era where a lot of people like get angry over games like this existing, right? Famicom Detective Club got slammed recently for not being a hardcore horror game, and this didn't do well when it came out. And you're gonna seriously listen to people who will try to tell you that they seriously want this or like Chibi Robo. Like those games didn't do well. Come on. But anyway, like my complaints about like the fan base aside, there's no denying this is a spectacular game. I I would suggest to fans to appreciate what you have, to appreciate the games you have gotten, and not complain endlessly about not getting sequels. This game is special because there's not a whole lot like it. If they kept pumping out like endless Wario Land games, we wouldn't have as much of a appreciation for them. So I'm very happy with what Goodfield has been doing since this game came out. I love Woolly World, I love Epic Yarn, I love Princess Peach Showtime. Like again, they've been a pretty solid studio for Nintendo. One of my favorites, even if nothing they've ever put out has like quite reached these levels. But I still really enjoy them, and I hope they really, really make a Giga hit someday. But until that day, I'm simply going to sing this game's praises until the end of time.
I know a lot of gamers out there don't have much patience. At least that's what Bishop, the dude at the video store, said. So I'm at the register, then I realized I got no money. I was seriously broke. Why? Because I met this smoking hot chick last night at the deathmatch bar. Man, she smelled good. So being the gentleman I am, I bought her a drink. Anywho, I decided to get a job. The gig? Assassinate the drifter. So I went where I was supposed to and waited for the guy to show up. And there he was, this cat, well-dressed, cool, couldn't tell if he was the shit or just plain old shit. Yeah, so he's styling, fast, aggressive, and packing heat. Bada bing. Or at least it was supposed to be. Till she showed up. Her name? Sylvia Crystal, an agent with this whatchamacallit association.
Congratulations. You are certified as the 11th best hitman. How about getting rid of the 10 killers above you and aim for the top?
I want to be number one. How's that? Short and simple enough for you? It's gonna be a long, hard road. But who knows? Could kick ass. Could be dangerous. Could totally suck. What do you say, bro? Join me. Let's see how far we can take this. And for you there holding the Wii remote right now, just press the A button. Let the bloodshed begin.
I've given statements before about how No More Heroes is my second favorite game of all time. And when I was recording footage for this top 10, I I kind of struggled putting the controller down because I was getting hyped, doing it all over again, seeing those cutscenes, hearing those voice lines. My spleen, like getting into those combat situations and walking up to the boss. It was a monumental experience. And keep in mind, it hasn't been that long since I last played the game. I played it on stream some time ago, but this is positively one of the most engaging, interesting, low budget projects on any Nintendo hardware. Like, it is interesting to see that this game exists, considering how many people even today, love to spout this lie that like, Nintendo fans don't like adult content, when No More Heroes is honestly more mature and adult than basically any other video game I can think of. Considering how like the character of Travis grows and develops throughout these games, he actually grows up in a lot of respects. I'll probably make a video essay about that at some point as my YouTubing skills improve. But again, this game is so much more dynamic and interesting than anything that Larian or From Slop has ever done. Like, No More Heroes really stomps, I think, every other game that came out around that period because they knew, Suda51 knew, his team knew that the Wii was an interesting piece of hardware that could be utilized to do things that no other console could do. So they put together this game, an action game that heavily utilizes motion controls and the Wii's unique hardware to create an engaging experience that can't really be found anywhere else. The game has been re-released on Switch and PC and other platforms, but the Wii version is 100% still the definitive version to play the game. And honestly, unless Nintendo puts out like a Wii remote, like a replica thing, so to completely replicate the experience, it always will be because there are just things about this game that really emphasize the Wii's unique qualities. Like I've never seen like there are actually quite a few games that do this, but the Wii microphone is used in like surprising effective ways in this game. You know, having Sylvia Crystal like whisper in your ear as you're going to fight the final boss, it never ever gets old. And I think it's worth mentioning that this game did not look great even when it came out in 2007. I know that idiot who made that video mocking me for enjoying this game back when I made my top 10 games ever list. I know that guy made fun of the visual style, but the visual style is a big part of what I like about it. I like that it's low budget. I like that they couldn't do the things that every other developer takes for granted. I like the fact that it proves that you don't need cutting edge graphics to tell an interesting, compelling story. If anything, I think considering the game's art direction and especially the character design, it actually looks quite a bit better than games that come out later. Like, I genuinely think this game looks better than No More Heroes 3 because the character designs aren't as good. Right? Like, I think it looks better than a lot of games that were coming out around that period because everything, the visual design and the levels are so well put together and interesting and like really do what they're meant to do masterfully well. It cannot be understated just how this game manages to do what so many others couldn't do. In that, like, it manages to make a well written, engaging story with very limited resources, right? This is something that more game devs should be doing. And if anything, I think No More Heroes should have been more well regarded when it came out. I think this is something that should have been like, you know, a defining title on the Wii, right? This is something that everyone should have rallied behind. And to a certain extent, that is true. This was a huge success in the States, and a lot of people did really, really love this game, but especially as I get older, like it really feels like most people don't really respect this game for what it managed to accomplish. And that is a real shame. It really is, even today, like so much fun to play. And I hope that someday this game gets the resurgence in popularity that it deserves. It's kind of shocking how much this game means to me. Like, I put together a top 10 list expecting it to turn out a certain way, right? You know, oh yeah, I bet Super Mario Galaxy is going to be number one. But the more I thought about it, the more I really wanted to like emphasize the Wii's unique titles and releases. I really wanted to talk about Little King's story because I have a lot of people in my audience who are big like fans of Suda51 or what have you, who are big fans of like lesser known titles in general, who have never even heard of this one. I don't know if this is like the least well-known game on the Wii or what, but like I haven't really met anybody who's heard of or played this game in like a decade. Okay. And to be fair, I've been like busy for that span of time. It's not like I'm just going around everywhere like, oh, have you played Little King Story? But like when you look at how popular Pikmin is, when you look at how much people like really demanded Pikmin to be on Wii and Wii U, like why did you not buy Little King Story, right? In a lot of ways, it's better than Pikmin. You know, due to like the sheer creativity of the boss design and like the town expansion system. Like in a lot of ways, this is what more in line with what I would want Pikmin to be like, where each of your guys that follows you around has like a unique job that you can use to the fullest your to to that you can use to make money and expand your kingdom and get more guys to get other jobs that can to fight monsters and like expand your kingdom. Like it is a never-ending crusade to conquer the world so you can save it. And the game is very well known for having this really cutesy art style, but a very deep, dark, like retrospective story. In a lot of ways, I would put this up there with like one of the some of the most messed up games I've ever played. Like it's kind of shocking the things that happen in this game. That are like played for laughs, but again, that's a big part of just why I love it so much. And again, it's why it is such a monumental achievement for the creators at Sing, who unfortunately went bankrupt right after this game came out. This is a game that really needs to be talked about more. Okay, like I endlessly enjoy it. I get so much fun out of it. Like to this day, I still haven't like I've never even come close to 100%ing it and doing everything in it, which is a shame. But and we're never gonna get a sequel. But at the same time, like this is something that I really think more fans should take notice of. Like this is something that I, as a hardcore fan of these kind of fringe niche like Nintendo games, like this is the kind of thing that we need to see more of. Is just developers taking a big risk like that and making something like grand and spectacular. Like when you're the king, right, going around like expanding your kingdom, fighting other kingdoms, like it's amazing. It really is phenomenal. And one of the things I wanted to show off in this game, I wanted to show off the final fight for this footage I recorded, but unfortunately I didn't get around to it. But there was something wrong with my squad lineup. I didn't want to anyway. One of the things I wanted to show off was the really good musical score, because this game does something kind of unusual. It doesn't have original compositions. What it has instead is that it uses classical compositions that you might have heard in in orchestras or Looney Tunes cartoons or things like that. Like you get like really famous tracks like Night and Bald Mountain and like a handful of others, like several others, and they're all so well implemented and so well utilized that you just get a thrill every time you hear them, right? Every time you get a sense of like what the game is trying to do, like you learn more about the plot, you just end up just enamored with the world and characters and the creativity of the staff. I hope the creators are still working, because this is the kind of thing that like I really miss getting out of like mid 2000s Nintendo is just developers just taking huge ambitious risks like this. This game was just spectacular, and I really hope someday this game gets the appreciation it deserves. This might be a hot take opinion, but I can't think of any other Wii game that I've been playing more in recent years. I can't think of anything that's been keeping me consistently coming back for this length of time, right? That has kept me like so consistently entertained and has had like so much to do and so much to see, like so much to appreciate about it. And considering I've been playing Punch-Out again on stream. This isn't the only Wii game I've been playing lately. I've been playing several others like Super Mario Galaxy 2 and Kirby's Epic Yarn, which are also great. I've been playing a lot of Wii games lately. I've been going through my collection, and it kind of dawned on me when I was putting this list together that Punch-Out for Nintendo Wii is my favorite Wii game. Because this is a sequel to a franchise that had not gotten a new entry in a long period of time. It reuses a lot of ideas and concepts from those older games, but it really fleshes them out and modernizes them and really sells them to a new audience, because I can tell you for a fact that I did not play the old Punch-Out games growing up. I had never heard of them before. I remember playing this in the demo station at GameStop and being confused at how the game was supposed to work. Like, why is he blocking all my punches? Like, it took me a while to pick up on the counter punch system. But once I did, I started making my way through the ranks and like fighting all these guys, and I was just like, wait a minute, this game is amazing. Like, I slowly began to realize that this game was like this really unique, compelling action puzzle game where you have to like learn the enemy's patterns and do your best to figure out just what his weaknesses are and how best to exploit them, right? Like, I found myself like spending countless hours just like learning how to fight these guys, climbing up the ranks, learning how to get star punches, learning the ins and outs of the game, like learning all like the weird things you can do, all the cool little tidbits. And then like I beat the champion and discover there's a hard mode. You fight everybody again, and they are brutal. They are brutal and endlessly fun to fight. And then you have like a really shockingly compelling ending, which I think goes really overlooked in wider Nintendo circles, right? Like, I think a lot of people don't realize just how heart-wrenching it is when you put so much time into your character's career only to have him retire at the end. Like, that's crazy to think about. That's insane. But like, it's such an interesting direction to take the game and the character, to just kind of produce such a well-made, interesting, like, throwback title to like a classic Nintendo IP. Like, legit, Punch-Out started as a Nintendo arcade machine. A throwback to such a classic Nintendo IP, producing such a banger, and then never even trying to follow up on it, because they knew that this game was perfect the way it was, that they really delivered on what they were trying to accomplish, that they really put out like an absolute masterpiece. And I really, really value that. Like, I really respect that about the developers. I much like with Goodfeel, I don't think Next Level Games has ever really come close to like matching this this title. But I think a big part of that is because they're actually working more on like more original titles. They moved on to Luigi's Mansion, which is I think their go-to thing now, and like they put out Federation Force, which was also great, but yeah, none of them I think hit the mark the way Punch-Out did. Like, Punch-Out is just one of those games that I just really deeply care about and very passionate over, and I'm very happy like this has such a devoted following. I've been seeing like online just how even today, like, a lot of people like get a lot of mileage out of this game. I started a 4chan thread a while back and talking about it, and so many people were talking about like just how amazing it is, and like the animations and the characters, the fights, like really funny observations, like, ooh, bear hugger chose the bear. Like, it's like, it's stuff like that. It's just like, people like often say that Nintendo doesn't put in enough time and effort into like producing new entries and old IPs. But I think the Wii era is a really good example of how that's not true. Like, how many games on this list were like revitalized versions of older properties? This and Donkey Kong. Like, to think that Nintendo doesn't care about their own history is laughable, considering this is the company that puts out Super Smash Bros. Of all things. Like, I would much rather wait 15 years to get a really good punch out follow up than like get a rushed out buggy mess like 3 years later. Right? When the developers could be producing something new and interesting. Like, I like what Next Level Games has been doing. I don't really think I want them necessarily to produce a new Punch Out if they seriously think they can produce like interesting games outside of their big thing. Like, I respect that about them. I want them to do more and better. Like, I would like them to top this. Punch Out Wii is a masterpiece and it should be acknowledged as such, but we mustn't forget that although these games are great, the Wii was a great console, so was its follow-up platform. The Wii U and the Switch were absolute masterpieces of hardware, and we will be talking about them in days and weeks to come. But for now, let us all reflect on the past. Let us all reflect on how great the Wii actually was, and just acknowledge to ourselves that this absolutely was one of the best pieces of hardware ever made.